Welcome! In this video we'll be taking a quick look at Baek Wanjo, a epic grade tank class Elune. Looking at his base stats at 6 stars level 60, he is 42.7 KHP, which is decent for an epic Elune, an attack of 2.8k, which is fine for a tank class, and a physical defense at 4.8k and magic defense at 4.7k, again which is pretty decent for an epic. His speed at 105 does put him a little bit on the lower end of the mid-range scale, but still not too bad, as he doesn't have to be that fast. As you transcend him up to the max at +5, his HP does go up to a decent 64.1k, with his attack ending at 4.3k and his physical defense at 7.2 and magic at 7.1. This does make him a little bit of a tanky Elune to deal with, and his other main purpose, being an evasion tank, makes these stats even better. Moving to his first skill, Bash. This is just a standard single target frontline only attack that does 60 plus 90% of attack as physical damage. As the skill is leveled up to the max at +6, it will deal 550 plus 123% of his attack as physical damage to the enemy. This is a very basic standard first skill for a tank and doesn't do a lot of damage. Looking in at his special skill, Ghost Barrage. Ghost Barrage deals 80 plus 140% of his physical attack to an enemy and does a provoke effect for 1 turn at level 1. This skill, as you level it up to the max at 6, it goes up to 840 plus 172% of attack as physical damage. This is a multi-hit skill and extends the provoke to 2 turns once maxed out. His ultimate skill, Goblin Fire, is an AoE attack. This skill deals 70 plus 115% of his attack as physical damage to all enemies. It also gives him a buff that increases his evasion by 15% for 3 turns. This works really well for him. As you level this up to the max at +6, the damage goes up to 580 plus 141% of his attack, and the evasion buff goes up to a 30% for 4 turns. This is quite significant for him, as he is an evasion tank, and having more evasion is very helpful. So this is a skill you want to use whenever you can. His first passive, which is his main source of damage evasion, this one gives him a Seal of Exorcism, which is a soul effect when he is hit by an enemy. Each Soul of Exorcism will increase his evasion rate by 10%. If, however, he does evade an attack while having these, then he loses one of the Seals of Exorcism. You can get up to 5 seals, and they are obtained each time you are hit at least once, even from multiple hits. So if somebody multi-attacks him and hits him at least 1 time out of all of those hits, he does get a stack. As he does lose them if he does evade an attack, it is something that goes up and down with him, but as he gets hit, he becomes more evasive, allowing him to evade more attacks or potentially damaging attacks that might kill him or do significant damage. His second passive, Golden Rod. This gives him, whenever he gets up to the max stacks of 5 Seals of Exorcism, meaning that he has been hit 5 times without evading any attacks, when he gets to this, he goes into another soul effect state called Golden Rod Awakening. This effect will last for 3 turns. During this time, his attack increases by 100%, and his Seals of Exorcism are not reduced when he evades an attack. This means that he keeps all 5 stacks and the 50% evasion rate that he gets from it. After the end of these 3 turns, all of the seals of exorcism will go away, and that his state of Goldenrod Awakening ends. But during these 3 turns, he will have his highest chance of evading attacks, as well as having an additional 100% attack. His third passive. This passive increases his crit rate and evasion rate by 10% after he takes 4 turns. So if the battle goes on for multiple turns, which most of the time it will, and he takes 4 turns, then he gets an additional 10% evasion rate that is not removed, not lost, and is just part of a soul effect that he gains. This effect will be there until the end of the battle. This makes it even better for him to have that evasion, as if you count this after 4 turns, his evasion rate of 10% here, his Goldenrod Awakening, or his max stacks of Seals of Exorcism gives him an extra 50%, that puts it at 60% that he gains, as well as the ultimate skill being maxed out at 6 for a 30% rate that puts him at 90% evasion just from his passives and ultimate skill. It's making him very difficult to deal with, especially if you can get him to around 10% or more evasion just on his stats base. This makes him very difficult to deal with, as he will evade every attack unless someone attacks him with something that cannot be evaded. This can make him very difficult to deal with in situations dealing with standard mobs. His AoE ultimate skill Goblin Fire also does a good amount of damage, especially if he uses it once he's in his Goldenrod Awakening state and has the 100% increased attack, as the skill does do good damage as an AoE. Moving on to look at his skill gems. The first skill gem effect on his skill 1 gives a 5% chance to paralyze the target for 1 turn. As this is a very basic frontline only skill that doesn't do much else, the recommended is physical crit. The 5% chance to paralyze is very low, but it is going to be one of the skills that you will be using very often as a tank, so it is not bad just to have the skill have a chance to do something that will be meaningful for your team, and the paralyze is nice for your team even though it is a low chance. His special skill, the skill effect, and gems needed are the red for physical and then orange for crit. This gives a 5% chance to panic the target for 1 turn. As this effect already provides a provoke, the panic thing isn't so much needed, and just going for better stats on this, either for damage, crit rate, or what have you, whatever you choose to do is fine, as the 5% chance to panic isn't that much, and this skill will be provoking anyway. His ultimate skill, the recommended, is the red for physical, orange for crit rate, and violet for speed. This bonus that you get if you do this is a 20% chance of gaining an extra turn if you defeat an enemy, as this skill does do good damage, and it makes Baek Wanjo a decent farming Elune. This can give him an extra turn without having any type of gear set on him to give him the extra turn. As this skill is something you're going to be wanting to use pretty often, it can come into play, but in most cases it will not, and giving him just extra damage or crit rate on this skill can be a viable option for him. Gear recommendations for him, especially at the lower or early stages of gameplay, there is gear that you can use that will give him an increased evasion with 2-piece sets of gear. There are 2-piece sets of gear that you can use, both of which give him an increased evasion rate. This gives him higher evasion rate once he's hit with a certain percentage chance to gain that evasion, and can make him a little bit easier to get that evasion rate up on him before having him fully skilled up or before getting better gear for him. However, once you get into the more mid-range area and you still want to use him as a tank, as he is still pretty good as a tank even at mid-range, then you can go with better gear options, either tank gear or some type of damage mitigation gear. The Emperor set is not bad, the Ulysses set is not bad, and neither is this set that I have on mine, which is this Disciple Elune set. This set that I give him is because it has a 6-piece bonus of a 15% evasion rate at the end of every odd numbered turn until his next turn. This means every other turn he gets a 15% evasion rate just from the gear set itself. This is decent as he is an evasion tank. Other stats you would like to go for on the gear are evasion anywhere you can get it. So having extra evasion rate is nice, as he is also an evasion tank and shouldn't be taking too much damage because of that. This set also gives him the 10% barrier, 10% of his max HP as a barrier at every odd number turn too. This means that he does have a shield, so when he does get hit, it does absorb some of that damage. Try to get as much tanky stats as you can on him as he is a tank, so offhand going for a HP is pretty good for him as you do want him to survive, and then try to balance out your physical and magic defense just to make him tanky so when he does get hit he can offset the damage some. Any place that you can get evasion stats on him for your gear is good, and you should try to do that. On the dimension slate for him, if you decide to do this, then the stats you want to go for him are definitely going to be evasion, HP, magic defense, and physical defense. Basically the 4 on the right side of the stat info, those are the ones you want to focus on. His attack, crit rate, crit power isn't needed as much, his accuracy is only okay for his second skill's ability to provoke, and his attack speed isn't that important to him as he is a tank and is mostly there just to absorb the damage, or in his case evade the damage. Try to get as much HP, magic, physical defense as you can, and evasion stats anywhere that you can get him, as he is one of the few Elunes that actually benefit from the evasion stat. Overall, Baek Wanjo is a decent tank. As he is an evasion tank, he can be somewhat difficult to deal with, and he does pair well with other Elunes. Mainly at early game, one of the best Elunes to pair him with is going to be the Miho. The Miho is something that you get for free from playing the game and going through the different quests. Miho provides an evasion buff to the entire team. This can give him that increased evasion early on and keep it buffed on him at all times, meaning that he should be able to have near 100% or over 100% evasion at almost all times during the game, this making him very difficult and a very good tank, very difficult to deal with, and a very good tank for tanking things. He should be able to tank most bosses through all of the adventure stages, including hard, just based on his evasion stats alone, with a Miho there to help. He should be able to deal with most of the enemy teams also, and he does provide a provoke on his skill to help provoke the enemy. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will answer them as soon as possible. Thank you.